Hey, y'all.
What up, y'all? And welcome to the Birth Squad podcast. If you've been riding with the squad,
hey, fam.
And if you're new,
welcome to the squad.
We're your hosts, Dr. Ijama Kwandu and Dr. Kamisha Thomas, two licensed obstetricians and gynecologists, as well as best friends.
We use real stories to educate about pregnancy, birth experiences, reproductive health, and all things in between.
And while we hope you love learning about our podcast, it is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare provider for your specific care.
So to learn more about us and for more information, please visit our Instagram at The Birth Squad and our Twitter at _The Birth Squad.
Please keep in mind that the following episode may cover topics that could be triggering to some individuals. Listener discretion is advised.
Meet Letitia. She's the next badass birth warrior who will share her story to help the squad navigate through the complex and inspiring journey of pregnancy, labor, birth, and motherhood.
In this episode, we are talking about an issue that many don't talk about: infertility. During the interview, you may notice some medical terms or jargon, but don't worry, we got you. We have included definitions and explanations in the episode description, so please listen up and enjoy her story. Also, please be advised that this may be triggering to those who have struggled with infertility. Tisha, so welcome to the Birth Squad.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, why don't we start, Tisha, by having you tell us about yourself, like your age and your family dynamic, kind of what called you to pregnancy?
Yes. Well, I am at the tender age of 43, and I have a beautiful family. My husband and I have been married for 7 years, together 10, and we have a darling 4-year-old baby girl, Leanna. We are the Lee family. I'm Letitia, L-E, my husband, Leroy, and then we have Leanna, but it's a L-E in there too. So our family is, very fun. And we just, we enjoy just, this time that we have with one another. To me, family is very important, and legacy building. I just think it's a gift, and it's a part of, our life cycle. And I believe that's what called me to pregnancy. If I may go there, because there are so few girls in the family, I just felt like, okay, I need to put my seed out there. I need my legacy. When I had my daughter, I was 38. And so I just felt like I had so much, to give, so much information to impart. And just, I feel like as a little girl growing up, just talking with my friends, we all, thought about our future and what kind of life we saw ourselves having. I definitely wanted a family.
Right off the bat, Tisha talks about being pregnant at 38.
Why is that significant?
Well, when someone is over 35, we actually classify them as advanced maternal age. Or you may have heard that cringy term, geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah, I hate that as well.
Yes, it by no means mean that you're too old to be pregnant. However, these are medical terms that were developed ages ago and unfortunately have stuck. So as we all know, times are changing and people are deciding to start their families later on in life. While socially things have changed, medically, age does not. So the reason why we say people who are 35 or older get more attention is because there is more risk associated with having a child as we get older.
Like what?
There's an increased risk of miscarriage, having a baby with Down syndrome or other genetic abnormalities, increased risk of high blood pressure or preeclampsia, or diabetes in pregnancy, just to name a few.
This means that you may be monitored more closely. Some may be offered an amniocentesis, which is a procedure that tests fetal cells to determine if there are any abnormal chromosomes in the baby. Or others may have early monitoring with a non-stress test, which is monitoring the baby's heart 1 to 2 times a week in the OB office, or even have an induction at 39 weeks.
We will include a link with more information about some of the issues people can face in pregnancy as we get older. Now let's get back to Tisha's story.
What did your path look like to motherhood?
Oh, it was rocky. Yeah, I mean, it was rough because I think I spent so much of my early teenage years avoiding pregnancy, right? Like I grew up in the 90s in Oakland. I can tell you by the time I reached eighth grade, I already had at least two of my classmates already had children. And I hadn't even had my cycle yet. And so that was like, whoa, this can happen. It's happening. Also, I had examples. When you grow up, you have examples of what the future may look like for you and other people. And so for me, that was always through my aunties. I had one aunt who had one child, and she seemed to have it all. Like go to her house, she has all the snacks she wants to eat, just everything in place. Like she would like her home to be kept, and her son pretty much had everything he wanted. But she worked really hard because he was always at our house. And then on the other end, I had another aunt who had 5 boys and by herself, as a single parent. And they moved a lot. And I mean, it was a struggle, So I was sort of juxtaposing those two scenarios, coupled with my mom, in which she was a teen mom. She had me at 17. And so I always had the message that getting pregnant is something you want to avoid, at all costs until you're an adult. And in my environment, that there was other signals saying that, well, yeah, you want to avoid it because, it'll make your life that much more difficult. But then you had everybody around you doing it also, like in terms of my peer group. So it was very challenging to juxtapose those messages. And I believe just saying my prayers, like, Lord, just let me get through high school. Then it was, Lord, just let me get through college, and then it was, Lord, just let me get through grad school, without having a child. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm also getting up there in age, especially like in my college years. Like, is this going to happen? I don't know. Like, is everything okay? And I was actually married really young. My first marriage, I married when I was 24. During that process, that's when I got the signal that, okay, I might have some challenges, with my reproductive health because we couldn't get pregnant. And I was married for 3 years, 3 active years in the marriage. And no pregnancy. We tried, I think the last year of our marriage really hard because we were actually trying to save the marriage with a baby, and it just did not happen. And so I was mortified. I went through the round of screening and testing, and I was told that it was my left fallopian tube and that there were some challenges there. So I just kind of walked around with this jacket of, I have a problem, I can't, I began to question my womanhood. There were other events that happened that caused that marriage not to last, unfortunately. And I just, I'm a woman of faith, and I just believe it was definitely God's divine plan for me not to have a child in that scenario. And so I kind of put all my reproductive health challenges on the back burner once, the marriage ended, and I'm just sort of redefining life as a young divorcee. Yeah, I kind of didn't think about it. And then, of course, met my now husband, Leroy. We were together. I think at our wedding reception, folks were chanting, "Baby Lee, baby Lee." We coined, hashtag our little cute family name was Team Lee. And so folks were chanting "Baby Lee." But I mean, folks will do that and it's fun, and they mean it in love, but they really don't know underneath the hood what kind of pressure or what the true narrative is underneath that. And so while I would laugh and smile and say, "Oh yeah, so crazy," underneath I'd be like shaking in my boots, like, I don't know if we're actually gonna be able to do this,
So let's take a moment to break this down.
Yes, let's do this. So Tisha says that she tried for years to get pregnant. Now, some of you may be wondering, when should you see a doctor if you're actually attempting to conceive?
First, I want to preface this by saying that pregnancy and/or family planning will differ depending on your relationship dynamic. We will talk about conception for various families in upcoming episodes. However, in general, if you are under 35, then it could take you up to a year to conceive.
What? A year?
Yes, y'all. Getting pregnant takes time. For every cycle, there's only about 20 to 25% of actually conceiving. However, if you are over 35, then we recommend you seek a physician after trying for 6 months.
Now, Kamisha, why is that?
Well, we are born with a finite number of eggs. As we age, those eggs die. So when we are getting older, it could be that we don't have a lot of eggs left, or the quality could be compromised. And we want you to find that out sooner rather than later. Now, Tisha mentions that she had some tests done. What is she talking about?
When someone sees us for infertility, we want to assess 4 different things. Number 1, are you doing it right? I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes you're not actually having sex at the right time of the month. You don't need to have sex every day. Unless you want to, then by all means, please enjoy. But when it comes to conceiving, the important concept is that you have sex during the ovulation window, which for a 28-day cycle is day 14 after the first day of your period. Number 2, is age playing a role? Like Kamisha said, we want to know if your supply is low. Number 3, is it hormonal? Some individuals actually don't ovulate, like in the case of polycystic ovarian syndrome, or also known as PCOS, meaning that you have irregular periods. Number 4, is it structural? Like Tisha mentioned, she had an abnormal fallopian tube. This can impair fertility since the egg needs to travel through the tube once it's fertilized to then implant into the uterus. Other issues could include like a polyp in the uterus or fibroids. And one more bonus one, number 5. Is there something affecting your partner? When we deal with infertility, everyone assumes sometimes that it's the female, but at times there can be issues with the sperm. This includes no sperm, low sperm, or poor sperm quality.
So you have 2 options. You can come to see us to discuss your option for conceiving, or once you have tried and not succeeded. Unfortunately, the majority of couples will have unexplained infertility. Now let's hear what Tisha did. Please be advised that this may be triggering to those who have struggles with infertility.
Finally, like I think maybe 3 years into the marriage, we really were like, okay, we need to start. Like, because at that time, I believe I was like 30, approaching 36. And my husband, he was mid 40s. And so we're like, yeah, okay, we need to do this. So I honestly tried I went the holistic route. I tried the Ayurveda method. So just focusing on my diet and cleansing, the inside, and just making sure like mind, body, and spirit are, balanced in a healthy environment to reproduce. And then that didn't work. I mean, I remember one of the times my practitioner told me to go outside and lay like on my yoga mat on my patio and just lay flat on the ground first thing in the morning so that I'm connected to the earth. And so I would do that. And I'm like, yes, I want to. But, after a while, I would just say during that time, my periods were really a challenge. It was a moment of sadness, each month, because I would just hope that, okay, maybe this time, and then I would take the test and disappointment, So I tried acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and it was great. It was relaxing and soothing, but eventually the practitioner there said, I think you need to go back to the doctor and get another opinion and let them see what's going on, because everything is showing that you should be able to carry a child. So we don't know what's wrong. And so again, it was stressful because I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, what did I do? What didn't I do? Say probably 6 months when we were well into actively trying. And so, so I returned to the doctor and we did, just a round of testing, starting with they check to see if both fallopian tubes are working. So it's like the ink, but you go through all those things, but it's all the preparatory work you got to do. Mind you, I'm still working, I'm still working full time, in my career. But you have to prepare for those things, scheduling, logistically, physically, and mentally and emotionally as well. Right. And then the after, so I did that, and the results were that I'm fine. I should be able to. I remember the doctor telling me that day, like, actually, today is a good day for you. If you want to try today, you should be fine. So that, and then we also did some blood, of course, some blood testing. And I remember, gosh, during our final appointment with my doctor, my husband and I were there, and it was a male doctor. And he's like, I'm sorry. I don't know. You have unexplained infertility. We can't tell you what the issue is. It's something involving your fallopian tubes. Like, they're just not, connecting. That's not the words he used. That's my interpretation of it. He's like, but I would highly recommend in vitro fertilization for you all. And he's like, because he actually used to be an in vitro specialist. And he's like, in fact, I know I've done this for many years, that you probably wouldn't have any challenges with, with having a baby that route. So I'm thinking, okay, but what does that mean? And how much does that cost? Like, no, only celebrities do that? Isn't it like $10,000 starting? And so I had all these questions, and like, where does one even go for that? And I just felt like such a failure, I felt like such the failure, my husband, I was just like, I'm sorry. It was really hard. And then to make matters that much more interesting, so my appointment was probably on that Thursday. We had a baby shower to go to that Saturday for a close friend. It was hurt. It was so hard. But I think back on that experience, and now, like I said, my daughter's 4 years old. And so I've met many moms who've had to also try that path. And so we just don't talk about it, but it felt like such the isolating experience at that time. But, other women, definitely Black women, have gone through that experience as well. And so it was a sad time, for my husband and I, really, really sad. And we're both, social workers. And so we're like, well, we know we do have options. We know we can adopt, he worked in adoptions before. I worked with foster youth. So we're like, we can go that route. But I really felt like the weight of almost like a mourning, that I really wanted a child, and really having to have some talks with God about, like, why would you give me this desire to be a mommy, and for me to not be able to do it, So just a lot of questioning, a lot of deep thinking, prayer, and just, confiding in my husband, during that time.
If you struggle to get pregnant, you are not a failure, and you are not alone.
100%. And depending on the issue, there are multiple options for you. These include, number 1, timed intercourse. Maybe your time is off and we need to help you figure it out, like Ijama mentioned. Number 2, ovulation induction. Not ovulating? Then we give you a medication to help. Number 3, super ovulation. Are you ovulating? Then we give you a medication to just encourage the process. Number 4, intrauterine insemination, aka artificial insemination. This is an option for same-sex partners, single parenthood, or for men with abnormal or low sperm, where we introduce the sperm. Number 5, egg retrieval. For those not ready to conceive yet or without a partner, this is where we remove the egg and freeze them for later use. Number 6, IVF or in vitro fertilization. This is where the egg is removed and fertilized outside of the body, then placed back into the patient. This can be done immediately or later if not ready for use. This is also an option for same-sex partners or those pursuing single parenthood. You can use a known or unknown donor in this situation.
Now, when we say we're actually referring to an infertility specialist known as an REI, which stands for Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility. These are board-certified OBGYNs who got extra training specifically in fertility.
Whew, that was a lot. Now let's hear what Tisha did.
And then, because I don't stay down too long, I'm really resilient, and I'll cry for a minute, but then I'm like, okay, now we got to get to work. Let me put my good bra on, and let's go, ladies. And so I started to do research. I was like, hey, I know people. Let me ask around. Let me look into this, IVF thing. Let me actually identify the facts underneath the matter. Maybe I can afford it. I don't know how much it really costs. So I started doing my research, asking questions, and that led me to a fertility specialist out of San Francisco, Black owned. They took care of me. I mean, I really felt like, first of all, my first appointment, I'm in the lobby and they have all these brochures and pamphlets that talk about like Black women and fertility, and Black. So I'm like, oh, that's me. Okay. And infertility, and the path, and like, there's nothing wrong with you, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the right place, but it was really interesting because there were these young women who were, I don't know if they worked in tech or whatever. And they, young Caucasian women walking in, it was like their lunch break. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to freeze my eggs. And then I have to get back to and I'm like, wait, okay. So this is a thing. Like people are doing this. Where have I been? So it just helped to ease some of the stigma that I had associated with being, having a challenge with fertility at my age and as, a woman of color. Most notably, but my doctor was fantastic, and his team, oh my gosh, they really made me feel comfortable and at home, and just the possibility of pregnancy, such the reality that it could happen. I mean, my first appointment and my consult with him, he's like, yeah, he read my lab results, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I just think that the question you're going to have to answer is, how many kids do you want to have? I mean, that just kind of opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for me that I didn't think was possible. Also, they had a payment plan. They had different packages. I didn't know, and he's like, looking at your results, you're not, he's like, you honestly just need you need a mini, what is it? Mini in vitro package. And I'm like, a mini? What's the mini? Like, do I get a side of fries with that? Like, what is the mini? It's like just less hormones, like less, they didn't have to be quite as aggressive with me because my egg count apparently, and ultimately when I did we did the egg retrieval, I produced like, oh my gosh, they said like 20 something follicles. And I mean, you all know what that means, right? Because I was like, okay, the follicles, does that mean eggs? Baby? He's like, that's really good. He's like, I don't know if you're showing out or what you're doing, but for your age, that's great. At that time, I was 37. Yeah, I mean, it was a different culture. I had to get used to things like they're asking me, do you have a donor? Here's our donor list. And I was like, oh no, I'm actually married. They're like, okay, so you have a donor. I was like, yeah, but he's my husband. Like, what is that? Things like that. And then of course those hormones and the injections, and I mean, but there's things that you have to do, and thankfully everything happens for a reason. That's at the end of the day, when I think about this entire journey, it's that everything, your purpose and your pathway, you can't question why or what, because it all serves a purpose. We may see it and understand it on this side or in the next life. But my whole thing is, had I had not done all those preparatory things like the year before, just like cleansing my system, working out, eating healthy, just maintaining a healthy balance, being careful what kind of conversations, just intake, keeping everything clear. It actually prepared me for that in vitro process, because I felt really strong, really healthy. The hormones, I didn't have too many adverse effects. I just remember tracking everything, when I was supposed to take everything. It was a process, because I believe it was like 12 weeks of meds, including the hormones and the hormone injections, and you still have to live your life. Like, I think I had to go to a conference in Monterey, and I had to pack. You have to keep the oh my gosh, the hormones that you have to inject, you have to keep it cool. It has to stay refrigerated. And I was in a hotel room that didn't have a refrigerator. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I'm running around, went to, I think, CVS and got me a little cooler to keep everything cool in my room. So all these things I'm doing while still working and not telling anyone, because you just don't know. But you do what you have to do. But ultimately, needless to say, I was able to 16 embryos. And I think we had, like, of those 16, I think it was like 10 or 12 that we were actually able to combine with my husband's sperm, and they fertilized healthy. And so yes, I still got some eggs in the freezer because I only got one child, right? We did the egg transfer. They actually transferred 2 embryos. So, and that was just great news. I mean, from there, after the egg retrieval, it just seemed like all the news was extremely positive. They're like, you have, these healthy embryos, and you have, these 10 or 12 that were actually able to fertilize. And so you tell us, schedule when you're ready. So you have to do all the preparatory work, take medication to prepare for the egg transfer. And when we did, but this was the shocking news. Because of my age, they're like, it's our policy to transfer 2. So my husband and I, we were there, but we were in the room. I'm like on the table, like ready there. They announced we're getting ready to do this. And my husband and I were like, wait, we didn't say we wanted 2. We just want 1. They're like, but because of your age, this is our policy. So you want to do this or no? And so I know, I mean, I'm like, okay, that message could have come, much earlier in the process, but okay, we were already invested. I mean, clearly, it's pretty on the table and medicated. So we transferred 2 embryos. It was kind of reminded me of when you get a pap smear, and they have like this tube. I remember that. And it's like this warm water, like the solution. It's warm water. And they announce, like, when they're transferring the egg, like the date, the time, the mommy, the daddy. It's just really a pleasant time. I don't know. It was an emotional time as well. Like, this is really happening. I'm receiving my little babies, And so after that, you just, they give you some time. I think they give you about an hour to kind of recover. And they monitor you, and then you get dressed and go home. They give you the list of foods to stay away from now that you're carrying, and you have an appointment. You have to, you still have to take it's a different set of hormones at that point, that you have to take. I just remember feeling like it's my little secret. I'm like, ooh, I'm carrying this new life inside of me, but no one knows, it's my little secret. And that early, because at the time of the egg transference, they typically, it's like when most women traditionally are pregnant, they wouldn't even know during that time frame that they're pregnant, right? Like, you don't really know until, like, 8 weeks or 12 weeks. At that point, when they did the egg transference, I was probably like 2 or 3 weeks pregnant. Like, who knows that they're 2 or 3 weeks, So it was very early on. So you have to go back, and I had to go back and meet with my specialist before I could go to my OB. I remember at my final appointment when they're like, yes, you have, I think it was the 12-week appointment, at 12 weeks, they said, we only see 1 heartbeat. So one of the embryos, I actually don't know what happened, just didn't make it. And so they said, I think that's why they have the policy, at my age, to transfer 2. And so Yeah, I mean, I think I was just sort of, I don't know. It was just a mystery to me. I was like, well, where is it? Is it going to pass through my system? Like, what happened? And so they were just kind of like, well, no, it'll just kind of like dissolve, at this point, you're so early, in the process. And so I had maybe just a smidget of sadness. Because on the other end, I'm like, I wasn't signing up for twins, that is, that would have been a lot. So, thankfully, my IVF specialist actually knew my OB, and they're both Black doctors. And so that was cool, because I was able to tell him, like, okay, I'm with Dr. Thomas. He's like, I know Dr. Thomas. Okay, yeah. Kind of like, we got you. So that was such a relief, because that was less pressure for me to feel like I needed to communicate or tell this doctor over here what they're saying, or if it's conflicting information. And I also was able to communicate with her that I was going to go the IVF route and who my specialist would be. And she's like, oh, yeah, they'll take good care of you, So that process was smooth. When it was time for me to return to my OB, I just remember getting, going and having the ultrasound done. And each appointment, I just look forward to that ultrasound, because I'm like, I actually get to see my baby. I get to, hear that heartbeat, because that's all I had to hang on to at that point, was just the little tiny heartbeat. I felt good. I felt like I had a really healthy pregnancy. I was like the happiest woman ever, because the hard part was over. The hardest part was getting pregnant, and unpacking, all of my fears and myths about the possibility of it, And let me just tell you, it is expensive, but because I got my treatment package was less aggressive, and I didn't have to do as many rounds. I got pregnant one round. First round, I believe my treatment was definitely under $10,000. And I'm just being honest, because people don't know these things. And I wish I had someone during that time when I was going through it to really explain to me how this works. And I actually did have some, mentors and folks who went down that pathway, but you definitely you learn a lot, by having your own experience and your own journey. So we were able to just, get on a payment plan. If it's something that you really want to do, like you want to buy those pair of boots, you want to go on that vacation, you plan it out. And so we did that, and we were able to take care of it without getting in any deep amount of debt. So I'm really grateful and thankful for that.
Now, let's take a moment to talk about the financial cost of getting pregnant. Every place is going to have different prices.
It depends often on your state, city, and practice that you choose. Some, like Tisha mentioned, have payment plans, and some are actually covered by insurance. Also, it's important for you to check with your job to see if they cover infertility treatments.
Now, let's hear the rest of Tisha's story about her pregnancy and her birth. Please be advised that this could be triggering for those who have experienced labor and birth. We recognize and understand the significance of birth trauma.
But no, my pregnancy was great. Because of my age, I had was a geriatric pregnancy. And I was like, oh my, okay, I don't feel that way, but sure. So that just meant, I had more frequent appointments and more testing, honestly, because I think because once I shared, that we went through IVF, I had to see a neonatologist once because there were concerns about her heart. They said, typically babies who go through or who are conceived through IVF have issues with their heart. And I didn't know, like tiny heart murmurs, things of that nature. I had no idea. So I had a couple of visits to meet with a neonatologist. They thought they saw tiny holes in her heart, but they couldn't really verify that it was anything to be concerned about. So I think ultimately when I was like 8 months pregnant, they told me at this point, we can't really verify. Plus she was really wiggly. So she would like turn and squirm. So makes sense knowing who she is today. so they said, we'll just have to check her once you have the baby, you have to bring her in so we can check. And so that was probably the only scare. But outside of that, so me just being a busy mama, like, may she rest in heaven, Letitia Williams, she was my lactation consultant. And she started working with me when I was pregnant, because she had this company called Mama Swag, where she's like, my business is for women who are too busy to be pregnant and too pregnant to be busy. And so she's like, I'll ease the way for you and help you figure out, finding a doula and, just your birth plan, all those things. So she really helped me through that process. And so I was just that. I was too busy to be pregnant. I thought I could do it all. So I was still maintaining, full-time job, consulting on the side. I had a tour business, Spirit of the Town. I still have that. But I'm doing all these things pregnant, going to cardio hip hop because I like to work it out. I was the happiest pregnant person ever because it was such a hard fought, prize for me. And leading up to labor and delivery, by that time, I had a fantastic doula. And she, began to talk to me about sort of like the spiritual side of labor and delivery, and just really getting into the mood and what kind of atmosphere I wanted in the delivery room. And I didn't even know such things existed. So we have my baby playlist, with Salt and Pepper, Push It. And I gotta have it. It was towards the end, right? But really relaxing music, and also just what kind of smells I wanted. She had just like these beautiful aromas in the room, all these things, sensory things that I didn't think you needed during your labor and delivery. But what I will say is that I carried full term. I had to be induced. I was ready at that time, ready. They really set me up to believe that I would be in labor for 72 hours. They're like, just prepare, pack your bag, because we had to schedule my induction. And when we checked in, I didn't know that I was in labor then. I was contracting, but I didn't really know. They just felt like cramps, like mild cramps. They had to hook me up to the monitor, and they could actually then tell the rate of my contractions. And they gave me the miso that accelerated things, my contraction. I kicked into high gear, and then I was supposed to get the Pitocin. I didn't make it to the Pitocin. I got that dose of miso, and it was like lights, camera, action, let's go. But little did I, account for that week. And I think the week before, leading up to my labor, I prayed and I was meditating really hard on a 5-hour labor. I was like, please, can you help me with this just one time, just a 5-hour? And that's what it was. I delivered my baby in 5 hours, naturally. I was screaming for an epidural while pushing her out. And it was such a healthy baby. I mean, and it felt so great. It was such the release when I pushed her out. But I really did not think. It was just a fascinating, blessed, triumphant journey is what I can say. And I'm just really grateful, 4 years looking back, on having had that experience. So thank you for allowing me to share.
So, you had so many things that happened, path to pregnancy, and then birth. What really was different than what you thought it would? What would you say was the most surprising thing as a part of your whole journey?
I think it was contractions, to be honest with you. And because you watch labor on, movies, like Look Who's Talking, just go back to that movie and you're like, oh, it's going to be this painful thing. I remember asking my grandmother, she's 85. And I was like, Granny, what's it going to feel like? Like, is it going to really tell me? And she's like, girl, you got to go through it. It will be fine. People done it before you, they gonna do it after you. You'll know when you're in it, And I didn't, because my water bag didn't break, beforehand. I didn't mucus plug, all that stuff that my doula was telling me to expect. None of that happened. I was induced and I went full term. I was just sort of like, okay, how do I know when I'm in labor? Yeah, it felt like an earthquake, like my entire body. Somebody shook the room. After they gave me that meat, so I turned to my husband. I was like, "Can you please go to Top Dog?" Because we were at Altabates in Berkeley, and get me a lemon chicken dog, because they said once they give you the Pitocin, no food for a few hours. I was like, "We got time. Go do this. You know, you can do this for me. I'm good for it. Look at me." He left, and then they had to call him to come back because I started experiencing something that felt like aftershocks in my body. I was like, "Wait a minute, did y'all just feel that? What happened? Did you get earthquake?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay." And then it came again, and I was like, "All right, something is not." I'm calling them, buzzing the nurse in. I'm like, "Hold on, this room is shaking," and they're checking the monitor. They're like, "No, ma'am, you're having contractions, and they're coming back to back." I was like, "Oh man," just felt like lightning bolts hit my body, and I guess the experience is different for everyone. Because I've had some friends say like they felt it in their back, and it just felt like it shook my entire body, and it felt like just electromagnetic, like just bolts.
Thing you would change, like, or, questions you wish you had asked, about your experience?
I probably would have given labor at a birthing center, or if, should we, do this again at a birthing center, because I will say we were in the hospital for 3 days post-delivery. I think around the second day, I started to feel really institutionalized. It's like, okay, this is not my house. This is, people are walking in, it's just so, invasive and intrusive. And they're coming in and they're running these tests on the baby because you're there. You're like in patient care. You're in their care for these 72 hours. So I would just definitely go to a birthing center. I just feel like having more holistic, definitely, I would probably request a midwife instead, and just trust my body more, because my body did it. It was at some point where I had to just kind of release and surrender and let my body do the work. And she showed up and showed out. So I am so grateful. I think at the end of the day, it's just like, trust your body, and our bodies are amazing. Definitely trust my body. Definitely trust my inner intuition. And, like, I'm not crazy. I'm not a problem. There's nothing wrong with me. I would definitely say that there was nothing wrong with help. And I had to I was so grateful also and blessed to have had women, because spiritually, as a Christian woman, I also question IVF. Like, the good Lord wanted me to have it. It would happen naturally. But then I had, friends and sisters supporting to me that said, well, didn't the Lord create, the technology and influence the doctors in their hands? And even my IVF specialist was like, look, we can do everything on our end, in terms of the technical aspects and the research, but at some point, it goes into what we call the God realm, and so at that point, so I think it's definitely having a balanced perspective, even with your faith, just what's for you is for you, even reflecting back on it. If I wasn't able to conceive or have a baby, I would have to make peace with that, and just still, I don't know, maybe I would have adopted, or maybe I would have, I don't know, but it's just like, I feel like, your story, your path, and your journey is just that. It's for you. And you cannot get caught up in comparing and looking at and pointing, oh, well, they did it, so what's wrong with me? And I think I had a lot of that going on too. And just expectation, because we push ourselves so hard to achieve, I'm like, I got that degree and that other degree. I got that man. I got that house, I got this career. So now I need to get this baby. And so it was definitely a journey and a rites of passage experience. And I carry that with me, even today. What's for me is for me. I'm strong, I'm wise, ain't nothing wrong with me, And so I think that helps usher me, now I'm in my 40s, a greater level of maturity than I could have ever experienced. So
is that what you would share with other people who are going through a similar experience to you, like dealing with infertility, maternal age, geriatric pregnancy? Is that what you would share with them?
absolutely. Absolutely. Just to trust their bodies, trust themselves, to even like envision, or I mean, folks call it manifest. I don't get into all that, but just, really do, put out there what you want, journal. I did a lot of that too, while I was going through preparing for the egg retrieval process. I just start to journal and write out to the T what type of pregnancy I wanted, just what kind of labor and delivery I wanted, even though I didn't know all the particulars, but I knew enough to say 5-hour labor, I wrote that down, and just allow yourself, because I had you have so much anxiety there and fear and all these things. And so it's like, I borrowed these words from my husband. He's a clinician. He's like, give those anxieties and concerns a job. So that job was, let me journal. Let me write it out. Let me just, release all this energy, be open and flexible. It'll be your journey, your path,
Oh, thank you so much, Tisha. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
The only thing is, I would just say, just to be gentle with ourselves, like be gentle with our friends, be gentle with yourself, because I do remember just messages and, like we talk about proactive and protective messages when we're preparing young people to deal with and address racism, or any person to deal with racism. And I feel like in your circle, if if your sister shares with you, I'm trying, but it's a struggle, be kind. Please be gentle, with one another. I heard all kinds of things like, girl, I can get pregnant if I sneeze. My husband sneezed on me, we pregnant. And it's like, thank you, thank you for sharing that. And, did I not just tell you, my doctor just told me I can't conceive, come on now. Also, do not be afraid to just do your research, and just find out, what's involved with in vitro, alternative ways, methods of conceiving. Because if you want to be a mommy, it may not follow the form that you imagine, but what's the greater goal? You want your baby, or are you hung up on the process, and the method? I was stuck there for quite some time. I want to say for a couple years, I was fixed on it had to be this process. Take care of yourself, be gentle, be kind, trust your body, trust God, and let's have some more babies out here. My child is solo. She needs cousins to play with. No.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Your story is amazing, and you're a great storyteller as well. So we know so many people are going to learn so much from your experience.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. Oh my gosh. Thank you both.
Well, is there a way that the listeners can reach you or connect with you that you'd like us to share?
Sure. They can reach me at acceptconnect@gmail.com. They can also find me on my company website, www.exceptionalcommunityconnections.net. I'm on LinkedIn, Letitia Henderson, MSW. And if there's anything that I can do to be a support, share a kind word, or just listen, I'm up for it. I'm paying it forward.
Oh, well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, y'all, thank you for listening to the Birth Squad.
We're going to continue sharing stories from more badass birth warriors, because at the end of the day, you are the experts.
Remember, as you navigate your healthcare journey, that you are beautiful, you are brilliant, and you are brave.
We at the Birth Squad would love to hear more from you. Tell us what topics you'd want to hear more about. Hit us up on Instagram at The Birth Squad, and on Twitter @_The Birth Squad. Most important, make sure to share this episode with your squad. Until next time, I'm Dr. Ijama Okwandu.
And I'm Dr. Kamisha Thomas. Peace, love, and solidarity from the Birth Squad. Check out the podcast description for the explanations on some of the terms that we mentioned in the podcast. There, you can also find information about Tisha.